Today, we're going to get personal. We're talking about the instruction manual, the one written inside every single cell of your body. It's the genetic blueprint that makes you, well, you. Let's get right into it.
You know that feeling? You look in the mirror and bam, there are your mom's eyes staring back. Or maybe you have your dad's smile. That's not just a coincidence, right? Well, today we're going to solve that exact mystery. What makes you this incredible, one-of-a-kind mix of your family?
All right, so first up, let's talk about the stuff we can actually see. We're talking about those physical traits, the ones passed down that create that, undeniable family look. Things like your eye color, hair color, even whether your earlobes are attached or free. These are what we call inherited traits. They get passed down from generation to generation in a process called heredity. And yeah, that's exactly why you might have the same eye color as your grandma.
Okay, but wait. Hereditary explains why we look alike, but what about all the ways we're different? I mean, that's where something called variation comes into play. It's the whole reason siblings, even from the same parents, can have totally different heights or hair. And honestly, it's this amazing mix of what we inherit and how we vary that makes every single one of us unique.
So the big question is, where are these instructions actually kept? Let's imagine we've got a super powerful microscope. We're going to zoom way, way in, past your skin, through the tissues, and right into the control center of one single cell to find this blueprint. Okay, so inside that control center, the nucleus, we find these things called chromosomes. A good way to think of them is like bookshelves. They hold our entire genetic library. And here's the cool part. You get 23 of these bookshelves from your mom and 23 from your dad. They match up to give you 23 perfect pairs.
So if chromosomes are the bookshelves, what are the books made of? That would be DNA. It's literally the material, the paper and ink, that holds all the instructions. It's this incredible molecule that has the entire code for building, well, you. And let's zoom in just one more time. If you look at a specific section of that DNA, a specific sentence in the book, you find a gene. A gene is basically a single instruction. So you've got a gene for eye color, a gene for your blood type, all these little sentences that, together, make up the story of you. Okay, so let's pull all that together real quick. You've got cells. Inside the cell is the nucleus. Inside the nucleus are the chromosomes. The chromosomes are made of DNA, and sections of that DNA are your genes. It's this perfectly organized system, like a little Russian nesting doll of information. All right, so we found the blueprint. That's a huge step. But how do we actually read it? What are the rules? How does the body decide which traits get to show up and which ones have to stay hidden?
It all starts with something called an allele. Basically, for any gene, let's stick with eye color, there can be different flavors or versions. So you might get the brown eye version from one parent and the blue eye version from the other. These different versions are the alleles. And this is where things get really interesting.
So how does your body choose between them? Well, it's kind of like a shouting match. A dominant allele, we use a capital letter for this one, is the loud one. If it's there, it always gets heard. The recessive allele, with the lowercase letter, is a bit quieter. It only gets to express itself if there isn't a dominant one around to drown it out. It needs two copies to be seen. And this leads to a super important idea. Your genotype is the actual code you're carrying, the letters, like BB or BB. But your phenotype is what you actually see on the outside, like the brown eyes themselves. So it's the code versus the result. And trust me, getting this difference is key. Okay, now for the really cool part. Once you understand these rules, you can start to predict stuff. Maybe not the future, but you can predict the kinds of traits that might show up in the next generation. It's like having a little genetic crystal ball.
So let's say you know the genotype of both parents. How could you figure out the chances of their kid having blue eyes? Well, there's a simple but honestly really powerful tool that scientists came up with to do exactly that. It's called a Punnett square. So in this example, we've got two parents who are both heterozygous. That's just a fancy word meaning they each have one dominant brown allele, the big B, and one recessive blue one, little b. When you lay it out in this grid, you can see all the possible combinations their kid could end up with. BB, BB, or BB. And check out the results. If you look at what we'd actually see, the phenotype, 3 of those 4 boxes are going to result in brown eyes, right? Because as long as that big B is there, it's going to be brown. Only that one little BB box gives you blue eyes. So that gives us that classic 3-to-1 probability. Pretty cool, huh?
Of course, genetics is about so much more than just eye color. So let's zoom back out for a minute and look at a couple of other really fascinating ways this genetic blueprint shapes our world.
Let's talk about sex determination. It's all decided by our 23rd pair of chromosomes. See, females have two X chromosomes, XX. That means they can only ever pass on an X. Males, on the other hand, have one X and one Y, so they can pass on either an X or a Y.
And this really clears up a huge misconception people have. Since the mother always contributes an X, it's actually the father's contribution, either an X or a Y, that determines the sex of the baby. It's basically a 50-50 shot every single time. So where do totally new traits come from? Well, that's where mutations come in. A mutation is just a random change in the DNA. Now, I know that word can sound a little scary, but mutations are actually the engine of all genetic variation. They can be harmless, sometimes harmful, but every now and then they create a brand new trait that's actually an advantage.
And you know what's really wild? We humans have been using these rules for thousands of years, way before we had any clue about DNA. It's called selective breeding. When we breed dogs to be friendlier or crops to be stronger, we're just applying the principles of heredity to shape the world around us.
So, from something as simple as the color of your eyes to the complex code that literally defines who we are, our genes are like a history book. They tell the story of where we came from, but they're also a blueprint for the future. And that leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? What story are we going to create with it next?